What's up, guys? We are back in Vegas and it is WPT week. This place is packed. I'm at the Aria right now on the 1-3 and 2-5 list. Really looking forward to getting back in the groove. Just landed about 40 minutes ago, checked in, dumped all my shit out of my bag, ran straight here. So really excited to play, looking to have a good session. Can't wait to get started. So wish me luck. Let's go. We start things off with a bit of pent-up excitement around 1 a.m., pumped to be back in Vegas, playing the game we all love where we're actually allowed to record again. I open from under the gun +1 with ace-8 suited. We get two customers, the hijack and the big blind come along for the ride. The flop is just as excited to see me as I am and comes out ace-10-8, two hearts. What a way to kick off the session. The big blind checks it over to me and I start out with just over a 1/3 size bet to $25. Hijack calls, but the big blind has some evil intentions and check raises to 125. This play looks extremely strong, but we block 2 of the 3 possible sets on this board, plus aces and 10s would have likely squeezed pre-flop, playing out of position 3 ways, so I'm not too worried about that. With that in mind, this looks like an ace trying to see where he's at, or a heart draw of some sort. We're certainly not going anywhere, and I make the call. The hijack gets out of there pretty quickly, and we're heads up. The turn is one of the worst cards in the whole deck, the 10 of spades. Now our hand has been significantly downgraded, and we're either losing or chopping with all other aces. Big blind slows down and checks. After a check raise, I would expect him to continue with most of his holdings here, so this check does throw me off a little bit. Since our hand took a big hit here, I elect to check back. The river is now the jack of diamonds. This completes a few straights and improves ace-jack or jacks, but doesn't really change our hand whatsoever. So when the big blind checks again, I see no good reason to put more money in, and I check back, expecting to chop this pot a lot of the time. When my opponent says ace is good, I'm relieved. I table my hand and take it down. He shows ace-8 of hearts for a worst 2 pair. He had a huge hand on the flop, bottom pair with a combo draw, so his check raise makes a ton of sense. Fortunately, we dodged another heart coming out, but could have gotten a ton more value if the turn hadn't paired the board. Still, happy to take this one down and get started in the right direction. The very next hand, I'm dealt pocket queens under the gun. I open to 15. We see a call from under the gun +1, and it folds around to the small blind, who is the player from the last hand. He is not happy about the lack of hearts from the last hand, so decides to 3-bet up to $45. I really wish I could help him out here, but due to recent events, I find myself quite heartless at this point in my life, so I 4-bet to $120. Under the gun +1 folds, and the small blind calls pretty quickly. We're on our way to a 4-bet pot in position, and the hot start continues when the flop comes queen, jack, 8, 2 hearts. We've got top set in position in a 4-bet pot. The small blind quickly checks, and the downside of hitting top set is that it's hard for your opponents to have much. Aces or kings likely would have continued on this draw heavy of a board, so we may be up against ace king or a small pocket pair here. I check back, hoping to induce a bet on the turn. The turn comes the king of spades. Small blind checks again, and now it is time to put some more money in. I decide on a roughly half pot size bet, so I throw out 125. He calls pretty quickly, and we're off to a river, which is just gorgeous in the king of diamonds. Small blind checks again, and we have a sizing decision. I elect once again to go slightly over a half pot size bet and make it 275 to go. Small blind snap folds, and we take it down. Looking back, I really don't like the sizing at all. The way the board ran out, a middle sizing like this really accomplishes nothing. If he's folding to just about any bet, and if he's calling a half pot size bet, he's likely calling a full pot size bet. He'd have to have something like ace king or a straight on this board in order to make the call, and I think both of those hands would call a very, very large bet in addition to a medium-sized bet like this. But in this spot, ended up not making a difference at all since he went for the fold, but I should have sized up to about 5, maybe even 600. Either way, happy to take down another one. Some time goes by with no playable hands whatsoever until we wake up in the small blind with 1 limper, late position raises to $25. I look down at 10-8 of diamonds, and after an hour of garbage, this hand looks like more than just a girl's best friend, so I make the call. The middle position limper comes along as well. Flop comes queen 10-4, rainbow. I check, middle position checks, and the late position player c-bets out $35. With middle pair and some speculative backdoor draws, I make the call. Middle position gets out of the way, and we're heads up to a turn that comes the 4 of clubs. I don't really think this card changes much, other than killing all of our speculative backdoor draws. I check, and now the small blind checks back. I think he would continue with any queen X holding, so he may also have a 10 of some sort or a smaller pocket pair. The river is now a very interesting card, the 8 of hearts. This gives me a very sneaky 2 pair, and I think I can get value from any 10X holding here, or a small non-believing pocket pair. such as 8s or 9s, so I bet out $60. This is where I experienced something I've never quite seen before. My opponent snap calls, sticks about $30 or so in the pot. I table my hand, the dealer shows him, my opponent counts out the remaining chips and puts them in the middle. I'm ready to take it down till he tables his hand and shows pocket jacks? I am very confused by this, as he has the best hand, so I ask him about it. Why'd you put the rest of the money out there, dude?
Did he get caught? I didn't
Yeah,
see
good
them.
live.
It's fine. You put the rest of the money out like I won.
I didn't see them.
It's fine.
It's okay.
It's fine. A very interesting, supposedly unintentional slow roll on that one. The very next hand, we have a shot at redemption when we look down at ace-queen suited on the button. There are a few limpers, and our slow-rolling friend pops it up to $30. Folds to me, and I 3-bet to $80. Folds around to our new frenemy, who makes the call. We're heads up to a flop of 8-4 deuce, 2 hearts. He checks, and I'm in revenge mode, which tells me our backdoor flush is guaranteed to hit. I c-bet out $110, our opponent makes the call. The turn is now the 9 of spades. My opponent checks again, and I fire again for, oh no. I check back? Well, that's certainly not going to get the job done here. I'm not sure what I was thinking in this spot, to be honest. Looking back, I really wish I would have continued on the turn. The river now comes a 10 of diamonds. And Slow Roll McGee now leads for $200. I fold pretty quickly. Maybe the check back on the turn actually saved us some money, or it just opened the door for that guy to bluff us. Either way, we're on to the next one. One orbit later, we're back in the small blind and look down at ace-queen offsuit. There's a straddle to $10, under the gun plus 1 makes it 25. Folds to the button, who's the tightest player at the table. He's been very quiet so far tonight and only played a few hands. He pops it up to $60. Pretty small 3-bet size here. I'd normally raise playing out of position, but a 4-bet seems like a little bit of an overplay, so I just make the call. Under the gun comes along as well. We're now 3 ways to a flop of 6-6-3, rainbow. I start things off with a check. Under the gun checks, and now the button bets out for $75. Normally I would just fold in the spot, but against this player type, he's so tight that I really think I can steal this pot. Who would check raise the spot against 2 other players as a bluff, right? Only a crazy person. Only someone who had no regard for their own well-being would bluff in this situation. So I raise to $200. Under the gun folds right away, and the button goes deep in the tank on this one. I'm the most likely player to have a 6 in this spot coming from the small blind, and my play tells that story pretty well, I think. Eventually, the button agrees and lets his hand go. Very happy to take this one down, but I do not advise trying this play too often. Bluffing into 2 players who raise pre is usually a suicidal play, but it worked out for us this time. Another half hour or so goes by without anything playable, so I decide to mix things up and blind raise to 15 from middle position. It folds to the button who raises to $50. What a way to ruin all the fun. Folds back around to me, and eventually I do have to look at my hand, so I take a look, and we have 4 deuce of hearts. I'll be closing the action here, heads up, and I have a soft spot for low suited connectors, so I make the call. The flop comes 8-3 deuce, 2 spades. Not bad, we have a pair. I check, and the button continues for $45. This board does not look like it will connect well with a 3-bet pre-flop range. However, it could certainly hit my blind betting range, although I did check before calling the $50, so we're not fully blind here. I do make the call with intentions to bluff on a later street. If more low connecting cards come out on this board, it should favor my range over my opponent's. The turn is one of those cards, the 7 of spades. I check, he thinks for a moment, and checks back. The door has been opened. In my mind, I'm firing on any river card below a 10, which is once again what we get with the 6 of clubs. I decide on a sizing of $110, and my opponent pretty quickly returns his cards to the dealer.
JB, 1-2 JB, 1-2 pound in Omaha.
Is that bluff making the vlog?
Huh?
Is that bluff making the vlog?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Nice.
Not the most exciting hand, but I'm a man of my word, and the bluff made the vlog. This hand I actually missed recording the preflop action, so let me catch you up. I look down at pocket jacks under the gun, and I open to 15. It folds all the way back to the big blind who calls. The flop comes 10-9-5, 2 hearts. He checks, I bet out $25. He makes the call. The turn is now the 6 of clubs. He checks to me, and we still have an overpair to the board. I continue for $50. He thinks for a little bit and makes the call. The river comes the king of spades. Now our opponent tanks for a little while and bets out $100. I want to stress something here. Come here. In these situations, they always have it. I repeat, in these situations, they always have it. I don't care how good the price is. I don't care what your pot odds are. They always have it.
All right, if you river me, you river me. And you did river me. Unbelievable.
Except it's extremely believable, and when they lead the river like this, for the last time, they always have it. Before we get into the most interesting hand of the night, I have to say, I always seem to find myself in wild situations with this hand. I swear it's not on purpose. It's just the way the hand unfolds that it always seems to happen whenever I have sevens. There's a straddle to $10 and I'm under the gun looking down at pocket sevens. I call and the player on my direct left makes it 50 to go. This particular player I think I've seen play less than 10 hands in the last 3 hours, but the ones he's played very aggressively. He's a younger guy around my age, European, has his headphones on, hasn't said a word to the table since he's been here. It folds all the way back around to me, and for $40 more, I like to see a flop heads up. Let's try to hit a set on this guy. The flop comes 9-5-5, rainbow. I check, he continues for $35. That seems reasonable to me. It's not super likely he connected with his board. He may have an overpair, or just 2 overcards with like a backdoor draw of some kind, and we could even be ahead. I make the call. The turn comes the 4 clubs. Pretty blank card overall, although it does present backdoor clubs. I check again. This time he fires out for $115. Now, here's where 3 very critical things happen that dramatically affect the outcome of the hand. First, I have to decide which line I'm taking here. I'm either raising or folding. I don't feel comfortable calling here, as I've put this player on one of 2 types of hands. An overpair, like 10s through aces, or a strong draw, such as 6-7, backdoor clubs, maybe even a combo draw, ace deuce of clubs, something like that. I also think my hand should be a fold most of the time. However, 5 a.m. in Vegas is not one of those times. My brain reasons that there are more draws out there that our opponent can have than a pocket pair he would play this way. Plus, we'll find out real fast with a raise. This is where the second mistake happens. I count out $300 in chips and announce a raise. My reasoning is just shy of a 3x raise in this situation will put almost all my opponent's hands, other than maybe aces, kings, queens, in a tough spot here. Even those hands will have to pause for a minute before making the call. Here's where the second and third critical thing come into play. I accidentally was short chips with my raise, and I put out $250 instead of $300, which wouldn't normally be a problem other than being too small of a raise, except my opponent had actually bet 140, not 115. Not only did I miscount my chips, I miscounted his chips. Really no excuses here, gotta play better than this. The dealer points out my mistake, so I toss in the extra $30. At this point, I fumbled this hand worse than Mark Sanchez running into the back of his own offensive lineman. However, we got our head back in the game. The check raise sizing may have been a bit of a mess, but my reasons for raising are still intact. He thinks for a bit and puts in the call. I'm rooting for a blank river card here, and that is exactly what we get with the king of spades. All the draws brick, and when my opponent doesn't shove the turn after my fumbled mess of a raise, I kind of rule out aces or kings. So I really don't think it's likely that he connected with this card unless he specifically has king X of clubs. If anything, I think this is a scare card for him because it's likely he has missed clubs or a middling pocket pair like 10s, jacks, queens that is not gonna like that king whatsoever. I had already made my decision what to do here when I raise the turn. Here's the moment of truth. I shove all in for just shy of $800. Now my opponent tanks for a long time. I mean a long time. I feel pretty confident that my read was correct and he has some middling pair like 10s, jacks, queens and didn't like the river king. During this time, I'm trying my absolute best to stare blankly at the board, which isn't as hard as usual considering I'm actually very tired. He checks his hand a few times and looks pretty close to a fold on multiple occasions. Eventually, after an amount of time that went on longer than my last relationship passes,
Good call. You're good.
he turns over king, queen of clubs. So he did have overcards with the club draw and just happened to hit one of them on the final card. We were ahead every step of this hand until the river. At this point, the guy takes out his headphones and chats with me pretty in depth about this hand for the next few minutes. He loved the way I played it, except for the raise size on the turn, which he supposedly would have folded to a larger size, such as 300 plus, which was my intention the entire time. When I told him I meant to raise 300, he said he may have folded there, maybe 350 would have got the job done. Even with that, he still almost folded the river as well. Take a second, pause the video, drop a comment down below, let me know what you think about this hand, what you would have done differently. Was it a great bluff attempt or just a punt? I'd love to hear from you guys. Please let me know what you think. After this hand, it's 5 in the morning. I gather my things and head back to the room. We're done poker for tonight. Thanks so much for watching, guys. That session was, it was such a good start. It went so well right up until the pocket sevens hand. And honestly, I'm still pretty happy with it. despite the result. Can't always be results oriented. Oh, I've gone over it so many times, and I really just think if I got the turn sizing right, he would have folded, and then, you know, would have been a very different result. But other than that, had some really good luck in the beginning with the queens, with the ace-8 hand. Got a really sweet bluff through with the 4 deuce. If you're watching this at any time in January, I'm actually going to Vegas on the 28th and will be there for the rest of the month. So you can find me at the Wynn, the Aria, the Bellagio, pretty much all the poker rooms. Please feel free to come up and say hi. I'd love to meet some of you guys. Numbers here, in for 1,000, out for 0. It happens that way sometimes. Good session overall, with the exception of that final hand. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. See you next time.